Welcome back to Reliable Prepper. If you're here today, it's probably because, like many of us, you're concerned about the direction our country is heading. And who could blame you? The 2024 U.S. election is proving to be one of the most crucial and unpredictable events in recent history. The political tension is thick, and no matter where you stand, it's impossible to ignore the increasing potential for unrest. This isn't just another election, it's a pivotal moment that could shape the future of American values as we know them. If you're thinking, how can I make sure my family, my home, and my community are safe if things start to unravel? Then you're in the right place. Today we're breaking down the potential risks of political violence, examining scenarios we could face not only on Election Day, but in the aftermath, and most importantly, sharing strategies to keep you and your loved ones safe. Before we get into it, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button so you're always in the loop. And for even more tips and updates as we approach Election Day, be sure to follow Reliable Prepper on Facebook for all the latest insights and preparedness guides. The lead-up to the 2024 election has created an atmosphere of unprecedented tension, unlike anything we've seen in recent history. Many conservatives feel increasingly marginalized, believing that their voices are being systematically muted by biased media outlets and social media censorship. What were once considered mainstream ideals, support for traditional family structures, strong national defense, and individual freedoms, are now being labeled as radical by the media. This portrayal has led to a growing distrust in the country's institutions, particularly among Republicans who feel their values are being eroded. A major point of contention is the ongoing legal battles faced by Donald Trump. Many view the legal cases against him as politically motivated attacks aimed at preventing him from running again. To his supporters, these efforts are seen as more than just political maneuvering. They represent an assault on the strongest conservative voice in the country. For many, the narrative is clear. If they can dismantle Trump's candidacy through the justice system, no conservative is safe from similar tactics. These cases are perceived as part of a larger effort to reshape the political playing field by systematically disqualifying prominent right-wing figures. Compounding these fears are two assassination attempts on Trump, which have heightened anxieties among his supporters. These attacks are seen as evidence of a larger, more nefarious plot to stop Trump from reclaiming the presidency. Many on the right view this as a critical moment, where the stakes go beyond winning or losing an election. They see it as a battle for the survival of American democracy as they know it. Meanwhile, the rise of left-wing activism, particularly groups like Antifa, has only fueled these concerns. What began as protests in the streets has, for some, evolved into acts of open violence, especially during the 2020 riots. Conservatives argue that these groups are emboldened by a media that downplays their actions while simultaneously demonizing right-wing protesters. This discrepancy in media coverage has deepened the divide, leading many on the right to believe they are being unfairly targeted, while left-wing activists face little accountability. As the election approaches, a sense of looming conflict feels almost inevitable. With both political factions digging in, the fear of widespread violence is palpable. Conservatives worry that if Trump is blocked from running, or if they believe the election is compromised, their voices will be permanently silenced. On the other hand, the left, galvanized by activism and media support, may see any result that doesn't favor their side as illegitimate. This combination of entrenched views and rising tensions makes the 2024 election one of the most dangerous and divisive political moments in modern American history, with the potential for conflict on an unprecedented scale. Political violence is not new to America, but the atmosphere feels different now. It's reminiscent of the chaos of the 1960s, when political assassinations, riots, and mass protests fractured the nation. However, today's threat feels more widespread, with danger lurking from multiple directions: left-wing radicals, government overreach, and even right-wing groups that feel cornered and abandoned. The FBI has already issued warnings about the potential for targeted attacks on political candidates, poll workers, and even voters. Many Republicans are increasingly concerned about being intimidated at the polls, fearing that violence could erupt simply for exercising their right to vote. The memory of January 6th looms large in the minds of conservatives, many of whom feel the federal government has been overly aggressive in prosecuting right-leaning individuals while seemingly downplaying violent acts committed by left-wing activists. This perceived double standard has left many conservatives feeling as though they are living under a two-tiered justice system. As Election Day approaches, these feelings of alienation and fear are only intensifying, and it's no surprise that many are worried about what could happen in the weeks and months leading up to the election. As we approach the 2024 election, it's impossible to overlook the profound influence the media has in shaping public perception. Many people, especially on the conservative side, feel like their voices are being drowned out by a mainstream media that often favors left-leaning perspectives. This frustration is understandable given the clear discrepancies in how different political events are portrayed. When left-wing protests break out, they're often labeled as mostly peaceful, even when they turn violent. In contrast, conservative movements or gatherings are frequently painted with a broad brush as dangerous or extremist. This imbalance in coverage can make people feel silenced and misrepresented. This type of media bias is more than just an inconvenience. It has real-world implications, especially in an election year. How the media frames candidates, policies, and social movements directly impacts public opinion, and it can shape how voters view the legitimacy of the entire election process. When one side is constantly vilified while the other is downplayed or excused, it fuels division and distrust, making it harder for people to feel like their views are fairly represented. In the run-up to 2024, it's more critical than ever to be skeptical of the media narratives that are pushed forward. We need to understand that what we see in the news or on social media is often just one side of the story, and sometimes it's heavily edited or framed to serve a particular agenda. This is why we can't afford to rely on a single source of information, especially with something as important as an election. Relying only on one perspective can lead to tunnel vision, where we're only seeing the narrative that a particular outlet wants us to believe. Instead, we should be gathering information from a variety of sources, both mainstream and independent, to get a more accurate picture of what's really happening. Conservative outlets like the Daily Wire, Breitbart, and The Blaze offer alternative perspectives. It's crucial to cross-check the information and always think critically about what you're seeing. The way a headline is written, the choice of words, and the images used are all tools that shape how we interpret the news. By understanding how media narratives are constructed and being proactive in seeking out balanced information, we can avoid being manipulated. More importantly, we can resist contributing to the growing polarization that threatens to tear our country apart. In 2024, staying informed, staying critical, and keeping a level head is more important than ever. We know how crucial it is to make sure our elections are fair and secure. After everything we saw in 2020, there's no denying that trust in the system has been shaken. And if we don't push for real reforms now, 2024 could bring even more chaos. For many of us, it's not just about the fear of losing, it's about what could happen at the polls. Places like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona were battlegrounds in 2020, and the tensions there are already rising again. It's hard not to worry that we'll see the same controversies play out. When it comes to expanded mail-in voting and drop boxes, a lot of conservatives feel uneasy. Sure, these measures are supposed to make voting more accessible, but without better oversight, they open the door to potential manipulation. The concerns about voter fraud from the last election haven't gone away, and it's left many of us feeling like the system isn't as secure as it should be. That's why voter ID laws are so important. It's not about excluding anyone, it's about making sure every vote cast is legitimate. If you need an ID for everyday things like buying alcohol or boarding a plane, it makes sense that you'd need one to vote. It's just common sense. Another big concern is transparency when it comes to counting the votes. People need to trust that their votes are being handled fairly. We need more poll watchers from both sides, and we need better systems in place to keep the process clear and accountable. When people can see what's going on, they feel more confident in the outcome. Then there's the issue of safety at the polls. A lot of folks are worried about potential confrontations, whether it's from armed militia groups or activists on the other side. The fear is that this kind of tension could scare people away from voting, especially in rural conservative areas. And if people don't feel safe showing up to vote, that could really skew the results. The bottom line is, without these reforms, we're setting ourselves up for another round of chaos, like we saw in 2020. We've got to push for a system that everyone can trust, because this isn't just about one election, it's about the future of our democracy. All right, so let's fast forward to the days and weeks after the election. Regardless of who wins, there are dangerous scenarios we need to be ready for. Let's start with what happens if Trump wins both the popular vote and the Electoral College. For many on the left, a Trump victory could signal the end of democracy. We could see protests and even riots erupt in major cities across the country. The Biden administration, in its final days, might struggle to keep things under control, or worse, they could turn a blind eye. From a conservative viewpoint, a Trump victory could restore law and order, but it also comes with its own risks. Left-wing groups might not accept the outcome, and we could see a rise in violent protests aimed at destabilizing the country. Conservative strongholds could become targets for this violence, especially if the federal government fails to act decisively. Now, if we flip the scenario and Harris wins the popular vote, but Trump still takes the Electoral College, things get even more complicated. We're talking about the kind of widespread unrest we haven't seen since 2016, but this time, it would be on a much larger scale. Democrats have already questioned the legitimacy of the Electoral College, and a second Trump win without the popular vote could push them to demand major constitutional changes. This could lead to mass demonstrations, especially in liberal cities, with violence aimed at Republicans and anyone supporting Trump. Lawmakers, businesses, and even homes displaying conservative support could be targeted. It's not out of the question that right-wing groups will have to step up to protect their communities if things get out of hand. And finally, if Harris wins both the popular vote and the Electoral College, many Republicans believe this could lead to the further erosion of conservative values. The fear is that the Harris administration, emboldened by victory, will push for extreme policies that attack gun rights, religious freedoms, and free speech. Red states like Texas and Florida might push back, refusing to enforce federal laws, setting the stage for a potential conflict between state and federal authorities. As we face the potential for unrest, securing your home is critical to staying safe, especially if you live in urban or suburban areas near a city center. These areas are more likely to experience protests or riots, so taking steps to fortify your home should be a top priority. Reinforce your doors and windows with security bars or shutters, and install motion sensor lights around your property to deter potential intruders. Security cameras are also a smart investment, giving you the ability to monitor outside activity without putting yourself at risk. That said, it's important to find the right balance between security and discretion. You don't want your home to look overly fortified, as that can draw attention and signal that you're more prepared than others. Blackout curtains are essential in this case. If you have a generator or other equipment running, try to soundproof it as much as possible to avoid drawing attention to the fact that you have resources. Keeping noise and light to a minimum is crucial during times of unrest. If people see lights on during a blackout or hear the sound of a generator, they might assume you have supplies they need, which could make you a target. Staying low profile and not broadcasting your preparedness to anyone outside your trusted circle is key to maintaining safety. Operational security, or OPSEC, is crucial for keeping yourself and your family safe during times of unrest. This means keeping your plans, resources, and movements private. Don't discuss your stockpiles of food, water, or weapons with anyone outside your immediate family or trusted group, as even casual conversations with neighbors can attract unwanted attention if word spreads that you're well prepared. Always assume someone might be watching or listening. Additionally, be mindful of what you share online. In times of heightened tension, posting about your political views or your preparedness can make you a target for harassment or worse. For sensitive communications, use encrypted messaging apps and avoid oversharing details about your situation. In politically charged environments, staying discreet both in person and online is the best way to protect yourself and your family. In most situations, staying put is absolutely your best option. Your home is where you have the most control, the most resources, and the best security. But sometimes, in the worst-case scenario, staying put may no longer be safe, and that's when you need a well-thought-out escape plan. However, it's important to remember that leaving your home during civil unrest comes with its own risks. If you're not careful, you could find yourself stuck right in the middle of the chaos, which is exactly what you're trying to avoid. Let's be clear, your home is your strongest asset. When you're in your house, you know the layout, you've got your supplies, and you've hopefully secured your property. But if things start to go south and the violence is getting too close, like riots happening just blocks away, or you've lost access to critical services like power or water, that's when you might have to consider leaving. The trick is knowing when to make that call, so you're not waiting until it's too late. If you do have to leave, you need to have more than one route planned out. Main roads could be clogged with people trying to get out, or worse, they could be blocked by the unrest itself. You don't want to get caught in a traffic jam or stumble into a hotspot where tensions are high. That's why it's crucial to have back roads and alternate routes ready to go. And if you've got the chance, it's smart to drive those routes ahead of time so you're not figuring it out under pressure. That being said, leaving your home should always be a last resort. The threat of getting stuck right in the heart of the unrest is real. Once you're out on the streets, you're exposed and you've lost the protection that your home gives you. You could find yourself in the middle of a protest or roadblocks with no easy way out. That's why bugging out isn't something you do lightly. It's for when staying put is simply no longer an option. Your bug-out bag needs to be ready at all times, but it's just as important to make sure your escape doesn't attract attention. Use an unmarked vehicle. Don't carry any political flags or stickers that might make you a target. And travel during daylight hours when it's safer. And always carry extra fuel, food, and water in case your route gets blocked and you need to pivot. Ultimately, staying in your home is almost always the safest bet. It's where you're best prepared and where you can hunker down. Only leave if you truly have no other choice. And make sure you have a solid, well-practiced plan in place before you do. If it comes to that worst-case scenario, act quickly, stay calm, and remember that the goal is always to avoid the chaos, not get caught in the middle of it. To wrap things up, it's becoming increasingly clear that tensions are running high, and the potential for political violence is something we can't afford to ignore. Whether it's clashes at polling stations, unrest in the streets, or targeted violence between opposing groups, the risks are very real. Being prepared doesn't mean overreacting. It means taking proactive steps to ensure you and your family can navigate these uncertain times as safely as possible. As things heat up, now is the time to focus on preparedness. Whether that's reviewing your home security, updating your bug-out plans, or simply staying informed about what's happening in your area, every little bit helps. Preparation is key, and it's not just about physical supplies, it's about mindset, strategy, and staying alert to what's going on around you. Remember, you don't have to face these challenges alone. That's why communities like ours exist. By following on Facebook, you'll stay connected with a group of people who share the same goals, staying safe and ready, no matter what happens. As we get closer to Election Day, I'll be sharing more tips, updates, and strategies to help you stay ahead of the curve. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe out there. The more prepared we are, the better we can face whatever comes our way.